Good morning, Bitcoiners. Let me just adjust my camera. You see the sun is coming in, right? We got plenty of sunshine coming in. So, right, I checked. Bitcoin is also running with the sun up and with Bitcoin running. All that's left to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. Let me know how my sound is coming in, team. I'm on the AirPods today. Um, Robert gave me a good clue yesterday that perhaps the gesticulation and the wire had something to do with occasional sound issues. And from now on, I am going to get a standing mic. That's probably better for me, but I'm going to try the AirPods today. No problem. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So I know you're all waiting for Moscow time, but I just want to start with a little simulation wink, right? We're going to be talking about the World Economic Forum today. Everyone sort of focused on Davos, Switzerland right now, and Switzerland in general under the microscope. And one of the conversations out there is the state of Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse, the famous banking institution that comes out of Switzerland. A rough couple of years for Credit Suisse. It seems like they're just getting smashed all over the place. Way too much exposure to these super cool rad hedge funds and that are running them into the ground, chasing God knows what. But here's the simulation winking. So the Credit Suisse group really trying to, like any shitcoin project or whatever, really trying to amplify some of the marketing and change headlines and the same kind of manipulation we're going to be talking about all today, right? We're talking about manipulation today. But here's the simulation winking, right? So this is breaking news. So Credit Suisse trying to say there's no problem with them, right? Credit Suisse chairman Lehman, his name is Lehman. I see no global recession. So the chairman of Credit Suisse is actually called Lehman. Is he one of the Lehman brothers? I wonder. is Credit Suisse now run by the Lehman brothers? What's going on here? What's happening? Who knows? Maybe they'll end up the same way. So Credit Suisse, Debt Suisse, call it what you will. I also have a little bit of bad news today before we get to Moscow time. And that is that our good friend Jim Cramer has incantated some inverse Cramer today. And like Puxatawny Phil and groundhogs, it doesn't look good. So Cramer sees bullish signs starting to emerge in the stock market. And so another 6 weeks, apparently, according to Wall Street Silver. Too bad. We thought things were going good. But here's the big Moscow time story of the day. Moscow time, Moscow time. What's the fakest news I could find? This is one of the greatest astroturfing headlines ever. I mean, ever, right? You'll never find an astroturfed headline this quality from CBS, who, through the Twitter files and through all the kind of reporting that's been going on in the past few weeks, we know we should not trust. And here's what they say. Everyone giving attention to Davos and World Economic Forum and what's going on with that. Here's CBS News. The World Economic Forum's annual meeting has increasingly become a target of bizarre claims from a growing chorus of commentators who believe the forum involves a group of elites manipulating global events for their own benefit. Ha 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 ha. We're going to get into it. We're going to give some context again, right? I think you've got the best WEF coverage here. Right? I think we are the best coverage of WEF out there. So what's going on? They met yesterday, and Klaus Schwab gave his opening remarks, and it's all about mastering the future, right? We're going to talk about how to master the future today. So first up, Michael Schellenberger did a really good breakdown yesterday of Davos and the World Economic Forum. It's sort of in line with what I discussed yesterday. It's an event. It's an event. Like Bitcoin 2023, we have sponsors. We're a new event, though. That's the difference. Bitcoin, the event really only comes from 2019. So we're in our third year this year, our fourth year. So not a lot of track record there as far as how much money we can make. But what's going on with WEF, right? As an event, they've been really successful, and Schellenberger kind of breaks it down. So he does a follow the money sort of analysis. First of all, he does highlight that you own everything, you'll own nothing, and you'll be happy thing. Where that came from, right? It was from 4chan, which we love. We love 4chan, but it was part of a whole thing at the time, and it was taken down. And in general, right, this whole you'll own nothing and um, be happy. Still, it's something that I think is helpful. We're gonna talk about it today, but ultimately was just something blown out of proportion and is used mimetically now, which we love. We're going to talk about memes today. It's all about memes, right? So he does break down where that came from and why it was, how it was conflated and how it was manipulated and all that stuff. So some people tracking that story. But the important thing that he underlines is exactly where the money for WEF goes and comes from. So it turns out, right? We know that a unnamed hedge fund is in financials. I think everyone can deduce it's BlackRock, simply because Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, has a huge say. And when I said yesterday that I've studied their model, that's what I told you, right? And it's entirely accurate that they basically pay these, they basically charge these big sponsors into something that doesn't look like a sponsorship, right? So in our events, it's new sponsors every year, and we go and say, "Hey, do you want a booth? Hey, do you want to? We're going to throw a party. Want to buy people coffee?" Right? It's very run of the mill, what you'd expect a sponsorship package to look like. But for an event that's 40 something years old now, what they do at the WEF is have this kind of federated board of trustees or what have you, right? They call it the board of trustees, but I'm not sure that's where the real power lies. I think it's a split of that. Those folks are the ones who actually craft the agenda. So money buys you access into this spot, which allows you to craft the agenda. That's why you see so much ESG stuff there, right? So ESG was always a BlackRock scheme in order to fight against the simplicity of buying Warren Buffett's advice, which is buy the market, get the index, or buy Bitcoin, or whatever other low IQ approach is being offered for people to get access to inflation beating strategies, um, or strategies that would help you beat the market or policymakers or whomever. Those things, right, are not good for someone like BlackRock because they want their 2 and 20, right? So all of these funds, of course, created off the 2% fee per year they charge you for the assets under management, and then 20% of what the portfolio actually earns, they get to keep. So it's the 2 and 20 model. It's been around forever. That's what BlackRock runs off of. That's its lifeblood. And so any justification of increasing the complexity of investments and the complexity of the strategy, the complexity theater, that really allows the confusopoly that we talk about a lot on this show to be sold to people, right? So invest with us, so complicated, world is wild, so hard, give us money, ESG, new thing, really complicated, we know about it, you don't, give us more money. So that's sort of how this stuff gets teed up, right? You go to the WEF, you say, we're going to have all these troubles. And then the asset managers sell the thing that was referred to and astroturfed during the event, right? That's the business model. And Schellenberger breaks it down pretty well here and talks about how he gets folks to join and how he gets leaders and all that stuff. But again, it's just an event, right? It's just an event. And Christopher Rufo had a really good breakdown of how we should all think about it. I agree with this, right? Christopher Rufo, if you don't know, was the fellow who was just named to the Free College of Florida board, right? He's part of Ron DeSantis's approach to renewing education in America, and so he's got a lot of attention lately because of that. And he comes up with a thread here that even Elon Musk responds to yesterday. So here's what he says about the WEF, right? And we're gonna go off of what he's saying, but then I'm gonna add some stuff to talk about how the WEF is really great for Bitcoin, and we're gonna get to that. So here's what he says. Unpopular opinion. The obsession with Klaus Schwab, Davos, and the WEF is misguided, as they have little real power over life in America. It's also an enervating, he says, as it shifts the locus of control to faraway figures, while constructive action can be taken at home. Stay focused. He goes on, in response to so people went crazy with this, right? So people criticizing. You have Dan Warner, but the good news is he responds to every criticism with an explanation. So Dan Warner says, I respect you a lot, Chris, but it's misguided to think the WEF didn't have a huge role to play in the COVID response and lockdowns globally. Christopher Rufo answers, in response to some counterpoints, ultimately Trump endorsed the mass lockdowns, which he did, right? So at the time when Trump was already doing this, I said, this is a major problem for Trump. This is not what his base would ever ask for, and he'll always have a sliver of alienation with people that really helped him in 2016. And I think his approach to the Operation Warp Speed, for example, did alienate lots of folks who would have otherwise supported him. You saw Legendary Energy Anomaly, that guy on Twitter. He's a big account, moves a lot of people. You get folks like Cernovich, who definitely left his camp for other reasons, but it was along these same lines. It was how manipulatable Trump was to other people, and how he, like everyone else, wants friends and people to like him, and he has the normal human failings that everyone has, right? So Trump here, oh, the smart people said, the Fauci said I have to do this. I'm going to follow them. I don't want to piss them off. I don't want bad press from the experts, right? So we don't need to mind read Trump too much to understand that he made a conservative choice that wasn't necessarily in the best interests of all of his followers. And in the end, he did price, right? He lost an important level of support that was there for him in 2016 that didn't show up because what he did here was equivalent to being traitors for what they had in mind, right? For what they had in mind. So I'm not calling him a traitor. I'm saying that the folks who thought that Trump was very invested into individual liberties, as opposed to listening to experts, that whole group of people in 2016 supported him. By the time COVID comes around in 2020, don't support him. And he was someone who could have used that group. So Trump was someone who didn't have to listen to WEF, right? And probably isn't someone who's influenced by them normally. But here he made a choice that would align with what they said. But also, I think what Christopher Rufo is saying is here, right? Here's what he says. Ultimately, Trump endorsed the mass lockdowns, and most governors went along with him, with DeSantis providing a notable exception. We didn't have to follow the China playbook. The fault is our own, right? So I think Christopher's right about that. The fault is our own, and it is Trump's in this case, right? He got that wrong, I would say. And it's part of the bent about why I don't support him anymore, because of that last day in office, right? By not supporting Assange, Snowden, and Ross, Trump made clear he is not the candidate for individual liberty. He made that clear, right? So he's for other things that we might like and that I might like, and all that kind of stuff, right? But on the individual liberty level, what was sold in 2016 and where he got a lot of supporters and people saying, no, he's for individual liberty, those people are gone. And the proof is in the pudding as far as his behavior. And it's not a huge component of people, but it was enough, I think, to turn the balance by not having those credible people behind him 100% because of what he did on Warp Speed and other stuff. Makes a difference, right? So here's someone else who, Amish dude, comes with a disagreement with Chris Rufo, and they give their reasons. So nothing wrong with disagreeing with Chris on this, especially when you give your reasons. He says, I disagree. I think a true locus of DEI is ESG, and ESG has been pushed and enabled by WEF. Break ESG and you break a lot of institutional woke power. Christopher Rufo says, sure, but the inventors and key promoters of ESG are American activists and asset management firms. And again, Congress should outlaw ESG tomorrow if it had the desire to do so. Could outlaw ESG tomorrow. The WEF can't force any US policy. And that's true, right? And that is absolutely true. And he goes on to say, I want the political right to be effective, and this is a distraction and an inferiority complex. If instead of the WEF, we full service reform, institutional governance, anti-ESG legislation, and higher reform, we'd be much better off. So I agree with everything Chris is saying, except it again falls into that world of you gotta got the IQs of 130 to start talking about all these policy initiatives together, right? So that's why we're gonna continue with this line of thought as we go on in the show. But remember, his solutions here, Christopher Rufo's, are complicated, right? He's correct. I'm not saying he's not correct. I agree 100%. Forget WEF and focus on these particular policy initiatives. But as Bitcoiners, we know these are dead ends too, and we're going to get to that. So he goes on, the big problems in the US, declining labor force participation, family breakdowns, social atomization, drug overdoses, institutional capital, racialist and gender ideologies, collapse of social trust, are not because of Klaus Schwab. They're our problems and need our solutions. So he goes on to say, he's trying to work on a positive idea. Elon Musk does come in and say, sensible thread, right, about all this. He says, sensible thread. We shouldn't be obsessed with WEF and Davos, but they take themselves so seriously. He puts the couple of O's. That making fun of them is awesome, and that's where I'm at. Right, making fun of them is awesome. And actually, what I'm going to argue for the rest of the show is that the WEF is a great thing for us, and we're going to talk about why. Mockery of the ideology is good. Christopher Rufo answers. Elon, obsession with the institution is debilitating. Indeed, obsession with the institution is debilitating. And this here, okay, so we're going to get to the board today, and the board has to do so everything we just said about WEF, right? Focus on it. What are the goals? Christopher Rufo had some responses. Don't focus on WEF. Follow these conservative policy initiatives. So Christopher's putting back into American political institutions, which might work. I mean, maybe. Maybe, right? It's not a bad plan. But we're going to talk about the Bitcoin plan. And first, we're going to talk about what the WEF actually can achieve, but it's not the WEF that achieved it in this case. I'm going to talk about the Twitter files yesterday. Li Fang had a new had a new Twitter thread and Twitter files related specifically to big pharma's manipulation of the message and of social media. So Li Fang came out yesterday and has this Twitter thread where he says, new piece from Twitter files, how the pharmaceutical industry lobbied social media to shape content around vaccine policy. The push included direct pressure from Pfizer partner BioNTech to censor activists demanding low-cost generic vaccines for low-income countries. In 2020, it was clear that the pandemic would require rapid innovation. Early on, there was a push to make the solution equitable, an international partnership to share ideas, technology, new forms of medicine to rapidly solve the crisis. But global drug giants saw the crisis as an opportunity for unprecedented profit. Behind closed doors, pharma launched a massive lobbying blitz to crush any effort to share patents, IP for new COVID-related medicine, including therapeutics and vaccines. BIO, the lobby group that represents biopharma, including Moderna and Pfizer, wrote to the newly elected Biden admin demanding the US government sanction any country attempting to violate patent rights and create generic low-cost COVID medicine or vaccines. Let me stop there and explain. Li Fang doesn't give the context here, and luckily I have it. So when I was working in the Senate Banking Committee in Canada, I learned, just because different things would come past our committee all the time, different laws, different provisions, all those kinds of things. One that came regularly was around the WTO and generic medicine. So medicines that use copyright patents in order to create a generic version of the drug, right? So they reverse engineer or whatever. So everything related to that was actually set up by the WTO in something called the TRIPS. So the TRIPS were exclusions to patent rights globally when it comes to generic medicine. And that's how India, because India is not a signatory to the WTO, in a way that would allow, I mean, they have some relationship to the WTO, but they're not a full-fledged member. And because they're not a full-fledged member, they actually get benefits, such as they can have a generic pharmaceutical industry that doesn't recognize patents and can copy patents and sell drugs for much lower price than they would be if they're patent protected in America. Now, what they don't get is the ability to market those and sell those products in foreign jurisdictions. So Indians can't sell their drugs to America or Canadians or whomever. And the reason being that that was the way that the WTO exclusions worked, right? So if you participate with these rich countries in their markets and they have more money for drugs, and you're part of the WTO, you have to listen to all these rules and you have to pay the real price. If you're not fully part of the WTO, you got these exclusions and you were able to do these things. So this kind of stuff came across our office all the time. This person suing that person, and how do we keep the Canadian company? Canada is a big generic scammer too with medicine, by the way. They reverse engineer. That Canada will say, "Oh, the Canadian pharmaceutical companies have so much R&D money. It's all reverse engineering. Like, how do we reverse engineer?" The boner pill or whatever, Viagra, right? It's all that kind of stuff. It's all that kind of stuff. So the TRIPS thing didn't apply to those countries. So what happened here, and this is what Lee doesn't get into, is that the U.S. government was actually the pharmaceutical companies to go against the WTO and start attacking. We're doing the off-patent engineering of drugs. Justin says vaccine research was largely funded by the government. I'll share this. Was largely yet the government helped protect private corporate from this funding. Shows the extent of the regulatory capture. Exactly, Justin. So we're not here to talk about vaccine safety, right? We don't really talk about that. Admit the vaccine is probably the most dangerous vaccine ever created. Probably. We don't know what that means. We still don't know to who that was more dangerous than COVID. Like a lot of people, the vaccine was more dangerous than COVID, but it's still foggage data, and who knows, right? And we get weed. Yeah, I mean, remember, if you go back into the history of pharmaceuticals, of course, it was the Rockefellers and the petrochemical folks who largely helped flood academia with their science to push out old ancient medicine that was reliant on herbs and health and those other things, right? So this goes on for a long time, right? This is a known. One is better than any pharma boner pill. I didn't see the boner pill part. Yeah, could be. Yeah, I'm unsure. I go with the old fashioned, just lift weights and eat well, and you'll be fine. But that's just me. This lobbying blitz that Li Feng gets into really, and it's from America, especially Germany as well. Germany, of course, with Bayer or whatever they're called, right? A big pharmaceutical jurisdiction there. Both of these folks were after the off-patent countries, and then what we see here is them pursuing the censorship takedowns of posts, and it was really just normal people saying, I don't know about this and I don't know about that. They got Terry here, a 74-year-old retired bricklayer. They went after him. He had no followers, right? They thought he was the worst. And it goes on and on, like low-level accounts getting taken down. Now, they did do the ones, justifiably. We don't, I would accept if the pharmaceutical companies were going after folks that were saying, oh, there's microchips in them and they're gonna, they have radio waves. And I mean, none of that was true, right? So I don't mind the pharmaceutical companies using this window for that, but of course that is magic. They can never risk themselves to the cases that are so extreme, they're obviously fake and misinformation and should be taken down. Of course, they went into more reasonable points of view because in the end, right, it was about money, right? It was about money. And we're going to talk about that now. So in the end, all you need to know about the new Twitter files, right? All you need to know about the new Twitter files is explicitly that the drug makers had their own pipeline, just like the government had, in order to get posts taken down, and they had their own motivations. And it looks like those motivations weren't limited to just keeping misinformation about microchips in the vaccines off the market. It was about everything. It was about the myocarditis. It was about anyone who disagreed with the vaccines. Basically, 74-year-old bricklayers who disagreed actually were targeted by their information control systems. And now we know all of this stuff as it's going on, right? As everyone's talking about this, you still see out in the marketplace, out in Twitter, in the NPC world, in the normie world, right? All that we've learned about the Twitter files, all we've learned about the vaccinations, all that we've learned about the manipulation of the message and all of these things. Now, you'd expect if humans were rational, right, and took logic and used arguments to make conclusions and were able to change their minds and see things fresh and all that, of course, there's enough in the marketplace now that people would have said, oh, we've been lied to. What happened here, right? And someone asks, why are people so angry? Someone on Twitter asked this, why are people still so angry with the unvaccinated folks, right? They believe vaccines were safe and effective, the people who are mad at the unvaccinated, and now learned they are neither, right? So if you believe they were safe and effective, we saw that on Twitter, getting mad at the folks who didn't get vaccinated. Like that was very common and normal for a long time, right? People would ask, are you vaccinated for a year when you came over, right? Are you vaccinated? Can you come in? Are you vaccinated? Da, 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 right? People even mad if you didn't get boosters. It went that far, right? It wasn't enough to get vaccinated. People were saying, "Why didn't you get?" You remember, it was virtue signal to say you got boosted for a long time, right? I got a booster, right? And this person asks why they should be mad at the FDA, the CDC, and Fauci, not the unvaccinated. So Kate Wand answers it this way: the scapegoat mechanism, whereby the Frenchman who came up with it, René Girard, argued that humans evolved a tendency, when faced with a crisis, to spontaneously imitate each other in blaming or scapegoating arbitrarily selected individuals or groups. Elon Musk responded to that and said, sounds accurate, right? So Elon Musk saying that this scapegoat mechanism actually explains this thing. And the scapegoat theory can be sort of explained with this diagram here. And what this diagram is, the object, right? The thing that people want, right, is sought after by the subject. So that's the real playable character. In this case, I'm going to say it's the NPC. Right. So this is someone else's model, as far as I'm concerned now, just with the way it's built, and I'm going to explain why it's main character and NPC, main character energy and NPC energy, as far as the differentiator. So in this case, we have the fully playable, thinkable characters who have something called mimetic desire. Right. It's just memes. Right. So here's an explanation, right? We must understand that desire itself is essentially mimetic, directed toward an object of the desired model. Two desires converging on the same object are bound to clash. Thus, mimesis, coupled with desire, leads automatically to conflict. However, humans always seem half blind to this conjunction, unable to perceive it as a cause of rivalry, right? So there's two ways you can think about it, right? So in this case, the subjects have these unspoken, don't need to speak them, complicated amounts of information packed into one that explain their desire. In the case of Bitcoin, right, it is that we have created money, that money is the root of all evil, and money, the nature of the money, the nature of confusing credit and debt with wealth, confusing debt with money itself, creates incentive loops that don't make sense anymore, right? So our the object of our desire here, of our mimetic desire, of our complicated, don't need to explain everything to each other on this show, right? We can speak in memes already on this show, right? We can speak shorthand regularly about all kinds of things, bias and everything like that, right? So Bitcoiners have a really intense understanding of mimetic communication, right? That's why we're such important generals in the meme wars, right? And again, I'll go back to the Trump piece, right? When I said Trump lost important people, lost the meme war generals, right? These were the people that were interested in individual liberties. These were the people that were directing entire armies of real humans into the fight every single day. And Trump did lose a lot of these memesters when he sided with Big Pharma. And I continue to think it's a credible reason why you can explain why he really did lose the 2020 election, right? That I'm not saying that is true, but you can see it if you believe that he lost a core group of supporters that are able to communicate on much more, information dense avenues. And this mimetic desire is what separates the mediator, in this case, the NPC, from their pre-programmed desire. So this is where the differences come in these times of change and times of chaos. So you get these folks here who can be told to want something, need something, or whatever, very easy, but it's not the same mimetic desire. It's the same thing that we see in the case of the vaccines, right? The desire here is to not be the dumb one in the room, right? Don't be stupid and left out from the science. Follow the science or you're stupid. Now, why I have two lines here is this suggestion, right? This is where the information is coming in from. This is where your motivations for the object actually are originating. And what this argument and this model from René Girard presupposes is, as this gets closer, right, as the mediator and the subject want the same thing, you're going to get into conflict. So the closer the object, the NC, and the playable character want, the more likely conflict is going to happen. Right? That's the more likely case, and that's where this scapegoat theory comes into play. Right, the scapegoat theory comes into play when these things come closer. What ends up happening is one group will move against the other. Right, one group moves against the other, and that becomes the logic of violence. So in the case of the vaccine, right, it was the example here was follow the science, follow the experts, follow these great people. The NPCs were told that, right? The main players wanted general health to get manage the overall risks at an individual level and a state level, but that was never there, right? You never got to manage your own personal risks. You had to take on and assume the risks of the whole group, whether it was mandates, lockdowns, vaccine policies, all those kinds of things, right? You had to take on the risks of everybody and just equate your risks. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, got it. Thanks, guys. This suggestion piece here, right? As this shrinks, that's what predicts conflict. If they get far apart, you're good, right? You're good, right? We can see different objects, different avenues towards those objects. If you get far apart, there's no conflict. If they push together, if the objects become aligned, if mimetic desires and pre-programmed desires become the same thing, you're in a fight. You're in a fight. Now, why do I put it this way? You know, for vaccines, it makes sense, right? It's individual health versus group health, and the different incentives aligned for what we have here. In the end, some folks, right, couldn't see the goal towards individual health very well, and continue to want the general broad brush application of health measures to everybody in order to save what in this case is ego, not being wrong, not being able to admit you're wrong, all those kinds of things, right? So um, the difference though, and the reason why this is so important for us and useful for us as Bitcoiners is the following, right? Everyone talking about Davos now, elites, right? It's the same kind of follow the science, follow the experts, follow that stuff, you know, all those people, follow that group of people. And for a long time, that was an acceptable frame, right? But Jeff Booth here offers a better frame for Bitcoiners and the world to deal with WEF, and one that will sort of put us in this same conflict, but in a way that we can actually use the WEF as a scapegoat and use the elites as scapegoats, and converge the NPCs on our side, right? So that we can predict a bit how these things come out. And here's what it is. Jeff Booth says, when talking about Davos, it is more correct to say the people who benefit the most from the manipulation of money than the global elite, right? So the people who benefit the most from the manipulation of money are the ones talking at Davos, are the ones pushing the agendas, exactly the same as we saw with the Twitter files and Li Fang, right? When Li Fang talked about who was manipulating messages on Twitter vis-a-vis the vaccine, what he meant to say was the people who are getting the most money are the ones manipulating it. If you follow the money, it's very clear why they did all of this stuff, right? It doesn't take a Sam Harris level intelligence to understand that follow the money produced a really good frame to understand what happened with the vaccine, right? It's not just, oh, these people are stupid. It was maintain order in order to project that order onto other subjects. But here's the good news. Here's the good news. Because the WEF has to sell this complicated system of elites in this field and elites in that field. What does the elite in Switzerland say? You had the guy at Davos yesterday arguing for those Oxford 15-minute commuter zones in Switzerland, in Switzerland, right? A land of apparent freedom, as far as I could tell. So again, it's more of these appeal to authority, appeal to current government structure. This is a guy who's been in parliament in or the Federation of Switzerland since 07, 08. He's only ever been a politician his whole life. And now he's got more prescriptions and more advice and more ideas on how folks should live their life. So if you start to put that into context, the manipulation of all of these fields in order to justify this overall hierarchical structure of experts and whomever, what you end up seeing is a little bit like what we talked about before. You're not playing the right game. And Davos, in this case, because it's all about elites and they like it and they're the elites and they said, I'm an elite and I can talk about 15 minutes and I can talk about Greta and what you should do and what, they're actually missing the real field. They're missing the game. They're missing the actual object, right? So as they go with all of these really complicated constructs and really complicated systems, and we're going to make them more complicated, right? It's like that Ethereum argument, right? The Wall Street wasn't complicated enough. We needed more financial engineering, right? We needed computer science layered on top of Series 7 licenses to even understand what we're talking about, right? It's more of that stuff. It's more of put the smart people in the room and they're going to come up with the answer, but you got to trust them, right? You got to trust them. It's more of those arguments. But the reason why this is a dead end street for those people, why they can't actually manipulate the NPCs as much as would be needed, is because we've simplified everything as Bitcoiners. We've simplified it down to money. And money engages all these mimetic forces, as I said before, the root of all evil, right? All these ideas that everyone has about money to begin with, right? Money corrupts everyone. Power corrupts, and all those kinds of thoughts. We don't have to program anyone out there. There's already a lot of mimetic force against the WEF. Now, it doesn't matter if it's true or not, right? What Christopher Rufo said is true. They don't really have too much influence over American actual policy, but they give that coverage of hierarchical top-down thinking, listen to the experts, right? They promote that system. So it's still objectionable and something that we should oppose and all those things. But its ability to actually mobilize American people is quite limited. And that's good, but the better use for them is that because people hate them already, we can use them as a way to channel this mimetic energy, right? We can use this as a way to frame the concept altogether. And it's not about complaining about elites. It is exactly as Jeff Booth said, right? It is about showing that people who are there are actually the ones who benefit from manipulating money. So we're able to square the game we're playing to money, right? We're just talking about money. There was a tweet from Elon Musk yesterday talking exactly about that. Um, Here's World of Statistics said more than 90% of all money, more than $50 trillion appearing in our accounts, exists only on computer servers. The sum total of coins and banknotes is less than 6 trillion. Elon Musk says exactly. Money is actually a set of heterogeneous databases with vast amounts of light code, still using COBOL on mainframes in batch code. So no one having these conversations other than us about what is money, what is the nature of money, and how money itself can help reorient and re-incentivize and realign most systems that we have, right? So in my argument here, those folks who are pushing for this hierarchical system have to have conversations in every field, every field. They have to win the debate like Li Fang showed in pharmaceuticals. They've got to win the debate in energy. They've got to win the debate in demographics. They've got to win the debate in consumer base, all of these things, right? What's happening? No, not even close. China got passed in population today or yesterday, everyone talking about it, right? India, so the population now coming down in China. India this year will be the #1 most populous country in the world. And all of that stuff already causing a bunch of trouble over on that side of the world, right? New things happening, new changes going afoot. Now you've got China, Russia, India talking about a gold-backed stablecoin, a gold-backed stable. So already shifting the focus of control of and pharmaceuticals, food, energy to whole new conversations and markets for energy at first, right? It's going to be an energy market at first that this stable coin is probably going to be used in, right? Now, a lot of trouble in Russia about getting their supplies out. I don't have much hope for BRICS and BRICS 2 and them actually coming out with this coin. I think they're going to have more and more trouble. But nevertheless, Americans and Bitcoiners and everyone who's watching is getting an amazing lesson in and one that you can actually observe in front of you. You don't have to be taught it. You can see it happen. And which is that money itself has been corrupted and these systems are misaligned. And so the folks on this side, right, the dopamine dealers, the policymakers, um, the corporate minded folks who are oriented towards arguments of authority and um, being close to the money printer, therefore being able to make money. These folks here have to basically mobilize on now they're capable. They have to mobilize on every subject, as I said. They got to do the gas stoves. They got to do the global warming. They got to do the food. They got to do the bugs. They got to do the housing, whatever, all of it, right? All of it. And that is complicated messaging. Exactly like Christopher Rufo said, if you're going to oppose them, you've got to do education reform. And so it's very complicated. It's very complicated, right? The good news is our argument as Bitcoiners is the simplest one out there, right? Money is evil. Get better money. Make the money not evil, right? This is not hard. And that's why we have such an inside track. That's why WEF already falling into this pit of mimetic jokes and becoming a joke and laughing at how seriously they take themselves and laughing at them is so good for us that it has to continue, right? And it will continue. One can't imagine that like Klaus Schwab is going to suddenly become like this charismatic person that people follow, right? These are losers and they're always going to be losers. And um, it's obvious the way they walk and talk. And Bitcoin is going to be the lens that allows a lot of people to be brought towards our side, right? Towards our side, because the truth is our mimetic desires are way stronger than their pre-programmed desires, right? Ours go deep. Theirs are all surface level, can be changed tomorrow. You see all those images that are really funny about talking points being injected into a brain of fear, anger, whatever, right? That's true, right? It's a combination of buttons that can be pushed at any time. But those folks are now going to be pressed with having to follow all these subjects. And I'm not saying they're all going to stop. I think you're still going to have people reading studies and like, what did the science say and what should I do? And all that's, you can't save everybody, right? You can't save everybody. But enough people are going to be forced to have this conversation about money, about the nature of money, and Bitcoin's going to force them to do it more. And we're going to understand much more about how capable we are of communicating at a much higher level that doesn't require an IQ of 130 either, right? It doesn't require that. If we say we're going to make saving money easy again, right? It's pretty simple to understand, pretty simple. And the good news is most people have almost an instinctive understanding at this point from the mimetic power to understand that these hierarchical systems that use authoritative arguments, appeals to authority in order to have cognitive closure and create the promoted and provoked desires for those objects are too weak compared to our cover fire of mimetic warfare, right? So the mimetic warfare piece and everything you're seeing about WEF right now is excellent. It sets us up really well, especially as they cry about energy, especially as they cry about all the mistakes they made, and they wonder if Greta's happy or not happy, and whether they figured it out, and they don't know, and they're wondering. So all of those things are great for us in the end, right? They're great for us in the end. All right, that's what I got today. So we are going to continue to encourage. We're going to continue to encourage WEF and all of its stuff. All of its stuff. World changing too quickly. And if you what Saifedean, I read it yesterday. Again, I'll read it today. It's this, and yesterday I did it just to compare the health argument that the argument around the whole health industry in America is, oh my God, eat all this crap, right? Take medicine to help you with your terrible health and your terrible lifestyle. And oh, we need more medicine, right? So the same logic applies to money, and we see it again here. It's Saifedean saying it, right? Fiat gives banks the ability to create money out of nothing. Fiat media then acts surprised that those who can print money end up owning everything. Brainwash morons then blame free market capitalism and demand more central bank intervention to fix it, which only makes it worse. So that's what you're actually seeing at the WEF, right? What Saifedean just described is the WEF. Right? It's the WEF. Look at all these terrible problems from money printing. It's capitalism. Give us more of these appeals to authority structures, and we're going to fix it, right? So it's not going to work out for them. Unfortunately, the mimetic power of our communication is just too good. We're going to be able to isolate on the real questions, the real object, right? Money being the root of all evil. So we're going to be able to do it, guys. There we go. All right. Dex says, lovely show. I say, see you tomorrow, team. Peace. Let me know how the audio went this time with these Davos losers. Yeah, they're losers. Losers. Whoever would take that seriously is an idiot, right? Sorry. Now, the lack of transparency is a real thing. We gotta find out all kinds of stuff about them, but better to use them as a villain in our story, and we're halfway there. Don't listen to the CBS. Oh, oh, it's new. Oh, they out themselves every day. All right, team. Peace. I gotta put the Davos losers there one time. I like that one when I